Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Steven, and I'm here for a special edition of Your Dota 2 news. So a couple days back, we had the sudden announcement from Valve that the Galaxy Battles Major was no longer a Dota Pro Circuit event. And that's really big news for a variety of reasons. And in honor of that, I'm going to steal Nahaz's gimmick and do a nice PowerPoint presentation for you on why it's important. There won't actually be a PowerPoint presentation since I'm using Google Slides. So, going to share screens with you. And there it goes. Infinity shot. And okay, we're starting it up. Present. So, Galaxy Battles Major, what went wrong and who's to blame? I'm going to lead you through what happened, why it's important, and then whose problem it is. So what happened? On Thursday, Valve announced pretty suddenly that it was pulling its support from this month's Galaxy Battles Major. And they released a statement on the Dota 2 blog, with the most important part being, quote, "We have decided to rescind the tournament's major designation, including the Pro Circuit qualifying points for the Galaxy Battles 2018 tournament. This is based on what we feel are unreasonable infringements on the privacy of the players as a condition to enter the country. The tournament itself may still proceed, but without any involvement of Valve or the Pro Circuit." So the country in question is the Philippines. So, in order to enter the Philippines as an athlete, you have to submit yourself to a drug test. This was confirmed by ESPN's Paulo Gonzalez Bago, by the Filipino Games and Amusement Board, who handle various live events in the country. The drug tests require a urine sample, which will be screened for THC, which is the active ingredient in marijuana, as well as methamphetamine hydrochloride, which is meth or speed, and possibly other things, but mostly those. It's predominantly a recreational drug test. It's a test for recreational drugs rather than prescription drugs, and that opens up a different can of worms than, say, if they were testing for Adderall or other drugs known to be used in esports. So, these policies have been in place for a long while. It's worth noting, and other Dota 2 events have taken place in the country under these restrictions, including, but not limited to, the Manila Major back in 2016, the Manila Masters, ESL 1 Manila, and so on. While those tournaments went on without a hitch, and while other tournaments have happened more recently without a hitch, there is valid concern with President Rodrigo Duterte's war on drugs that you're not going to get a fair shake if you do end up testing positive for drugs. So, while other tournaments have gone on, this obviously gave Valve cold enough feet that they were willing to scrap the event. So, this impacts Galaxy Battles and the players and the teams involved by taking the Dota qualifying points away from the tournament. There were supposed to be 1,500 qualifying points, huge number, 750 to the top team, and then more for the top 4. That is a really big blow for teams that were looking to potentially seal up a spot in TI8 at this tournament, like a Virtus Pro, like a Team Secret, like a Team Liquid. They will know their season will now go on at least a little bit longer as they hunt to get that spot. On top of that, they are losing a slice of the prize pool, according to various reports. And the prize pool is supposed to be $1 million, the minimum for a Dota 2 major. It will likely lose the $500,000 that was contributed by Valve in the Dota Pro Circuit. So the prize pool will likely be $500,000. Fallout Gaming, the organizer behind the tournament, put out a statement on Facebook this morning, Saturday, January 6th, saying that they respect the decision. Quote, in compliance with the Philippine government, the Galaxy Battles management believes the following regulations will help shape the future of esports. We feel that regulations would lead towards the right direction to legitimize esports. We firmly believe that there is a way to develop healthy esports community in Southeast Asia. This can be accomplished through a head start at Galaxy Battles 2 in order to usher a new beginning for esports. So that was from their Facebook page. Long story short, they respect the decision of Valve, but they also stand by the Philippines' drug testing regulations. It seems as though the tournament is still going to go on, judging by their statement on Facebook, but we have seen 4 different teams now pull out of the event, including Virtus Pro, Team Secret, Team Liquid, and Optic Gaming, and we will likely see more pull out by the time the tournament actually happens. So that's what happened and why it's important. Now, this is a really, really, really important thing on multiple levels for pretty much everyone involved in the pro scene of Dota 2. The most obvious thing is that Fallout Gaming, who are hosting the tournament, are going to take a pretty darn good hit from this. Losing the teams that were involved is going to lose you a lot of players. You are going to have significantly less happy sponsors involved in the tournament. You are going to have a lower live event turnout in terms of people buying tickets and going to see the show without, a number of different prominent teams that were scheduled to attend the event. Like, this is a big hit for them on every level. Just a couple weeks before the tournament was supposed to happen. Now, in a larger scene, this also trickles down to pretty much every Dota 2 tournament organizer. If you were hoping to run a Dota 2 tournament, it just got a fair bit riskier. You and your sponsors and your financiers and your bank all know that there's a decent chance that Valve is going to pull the plug on your tournament at the last moment. That's going to impact pretty much every tournament organizer, especially those in Southeast Asia. It's going to make a Dota 2 tournament look like a riskier investment for businesses, and just in general, it's going to be not as good as running a tournament in, say, PlayerUnknown Battleground or Counter-Strike or Overwatch. Well, Overwatch not so much anymore, but you get my point. Dota 2 is looking like a less and less smart investment if you're a tournament organizer, and this really, really drives that home. And for the Dota Pro circuit, that's really bad. The Pro circuit, as myself and M-Target have discussed many times over our over our year or so of podcasting together, that's really bad. That's really bad. The Dota Pro circuit requires tournament organizers from outside Valve to host Dota 2 events in order to run. And if they aren't getting that kind of support from the ESLs, the Fallout Gamings, the PGLs, etc., then the pro circuit just doesn't exist. And then if that keeps going, it's going to hugely impact the entire Dota Pro scene. Just in general, Valve has done an incredibly bad job of giving incentive to tournament organizers to run Dota 2 tournaments, taking things away like battle passes, like tickets, like compendiums, all those things. It gives you very little reason to open up a Dota 2 tournament unless you already have a very strong sponsor base, like an ESL. So this makes that worse, and it will impact things going forward. Even if it's only in a subtle way, it will hurt. Now, more specifically, this is really, really crappy for anyone in the Philippines that has a stake in esports' success. Now, this really stinks for the players, the teams, and the fans. The fans may or may not be able to get a refund on this event. The players won't be able to get the pro circuit points, which is important for teams like Mineski, Fnatic, and so on, that we're kind of needing this. This is bad for, anyone who lives in Manila, because esports, it's been one of the best esports destinations in the world. It has gotten frequent tournaments, between the, again, Manila Masters, ESL One Manila, the Manila Major, etc., etc., etc. This is going to hurt that in a big way, not just in Dota 2. This is going to hurt the Philippines' ability to attract any kind of esports event. Most notably in Dota 2, but also definitely in Counter-Strike, which is also owned by Valve, and also it'll probably trickle over into other, esports. It's not good. There's no good way to spin this. And it's not going to stop anytime soon. And while it won't necessarily kill the live event market in the Philippines for esports events, it's going to hurt really bad for at least a while. And that's a damn shame, because events like the Manila Major were very, very good. And the live crowd was a big part of that. So this is just shame. Now, this also really hurts the Dota 2 teams that were basically building their January around the Galaxy Battles Major. As of, I believe, November, there were 4 different Dota Pro Circuit events scheduled for January in Captain's Draft 4.0, GESC Singapore, the Galaxy Battles Major, and the ESL 1 Genting. GESC Singapore, and now it was canceled entirely, and now this happened to the Galaxy Battles Major. And that is really bad for any teams that were really kind of putting all their focus into the Galaxy Battles Major. Most notably, Team Liquid and Team Secret. Captain's Draft 4.0 is going on right now as I record this, and Virtus Pro and Team Liquid were not invited to the tournament and did not participate in the qualifiers for the tournament. In all likelihood, this means that they just did not have any interest, because they were primarily focusing on getting ready and putting all their focus into the Galaxy Battles Major. By taking that off the table, you basically blew up their January. They will lose out on the opportunity to potentially seal up a direct invite to TI8. And on top of that, if they end up missing out, let's say the teams, have some serious collapsing that happens. Let's say the team ends up losing a player or two, and they end up missing the top 8 by, 50 points. The conflict in January is going to really, it's going to be noticeable. This is bad. Basically tricking teams into leaving points on the table is a bad thing in the Dota Pro circuit in the way it's organized. The teams really need to be able to confidently schedule out which events they will be participating in and which events the top teams will be able to focus on. And Team Liquid and Virtus Pro, and to a lesser extent Team Secret, they get hurt by this, because again, they passed on other tournaments in order to seal up points at the Galaxy Battles Major. And taking that away from them is not fair. So the question is, whose fault is this? I've told you what happened, why it's important. Now we get to whose fault it is. So if you're a fan or a stakeholder in the Philippines, basically all of this falls right onto the government. There's been a very, very, very silly argument that has popped up on social media, both Reddit, Twitter, and Facebook, saying that Valve wanted to cancel the major to avoid the bad press of their players testing positive for weed. Now, on top of the fact that nobody really cares for weed, testing for those particular drugs, basically, there's no actual sports-related reason to do so. Now, in real sports, quote-unquote real sports, THC is being increasingly not recognized as a banned substance out of competition. It is still a banned substance in competition, and ultimately what happens with it depends on the rules of the particular sport and what anti-doping agency has jurisdiction. But generally speaking, nobody really cares if an athlete in any sport is taking weed. On top of this, it extends into other recreational drugs. And, there was an example in 2015 where the UFC light heavyweight champion John Jones tested positive in an out-of-competition drug test for cocaine metabolites. He received no punishment. He received no suspension. He went into rehab for 1 day, and they told him he wasn't a drug addict, and then told him to leave. Ultimately, there are no valid sporting concerns that would necessitate a drug test for weed, and ultimately, it's becoming legal in other countries, such that even if you do smoke weed and try and go into the Philippines, there's no issue unless you actually take it with you, which you shouldn't do. But again, it's a silly regulation that should not be, that Valve and other organizations should not subject players to. If they were testing for drugs in esports as a question about the legitimacy of it as a competition, the drugs you will want to test for are things like Adderall, Ritalin, and other drugs that are typically associated with esports on some level. Weed, methamphetamine, neither of those are part of that, especially meth. There is no reason to believe that there is any significant uptick in terms of esports players using meth. And going beyond that, this is a major concern, obviously, for Valve, for Dota 2, for Counter-Strike, for esports in general, but it's also going to keep a lot of other sporting events out of the Philippines. You're not going to see the NFL ship over a game there, if this is the case. You're not going to see, say, FIFA accept a application to host the World Cup in the Philippines if this is the case. Same with the Olympics, same with other things. There's a UFC event in 2017, that was canceled, possibly in part due to these regulations. And again, this is going to impact any sort of sporting event in the Philippines. And the responsibility for this falls entirely on the government. If you are a fan in the Philippines who is angry about this, no other way to look at this. But that said, for everyone else in the world, this is the responsibility of Valve, based on all the information that's currently available. Everything about this so far suggests that this was a gross, negligent oversight on Valve's part. The Galaxy Battles Major was first announced to take place in Manila in October. It was ultimately moved to Ciudad de Victoria at some point between then and now. And while some on social media, in particular Reddit, have suggested that that might not be a safe area, Valve made no mention of this as an issue and basically specifically pointed to the drug testing as the primary factor in their decision. I have no idea what this city is like in the Philippines. Again, I am just taking cues from social media, but it's not really it made no impact regardless. Now, the drug testing regulations, once again, have been in place for a long time. While Rodrigo Duterte's regime makes it, might give people colder feet, this tournament was announced in October, and these regulations were in place before he took office. They have been on the board for a while now, and if this was going to be a concern, it should have been a concern when the Galaxy Battles organizers announced the tournament for the Philippines in the first place. Waiting until just a few weeks before the event adversely impacts the teams, the players, the tournament organizers, and the fans in the Philippines who are expecting to attend the event. There's basically no real way, with the information that's available, to look at this as something that Valve handled well. Now, it's possible that there's information that might absolve them of this, but from everything we have, this is a bad look for Valve and basically suggests that they just recently found out that this was going to be an issue and then had to take brash action. They should have vetted this. They should have known about this in advance, and they shouldn't have let everything advance to this point before canceling the event, because it takes away from the players, and it takes away from the teams, and it takes away from the fans. And all of this should have been avoided and should have been handled when the tournament was first announced for Manila in October. There's no other way to look at this. Again, there might be some information that they're not giving us, and if it comes out, then I'll change my opinion. But until that happens, I'm looking at this as an issue with how Valve handles these situations. So that's the end of this. I'll switch back over to my camera. Hello. So that's the end of the video. If you have any questions, make sure to reach out on Twitter. My handle is in the description. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. If you have a different opinion than mine, feel free to express it in the comments. I am going to let you all go. Make sure to tune in for the next edition of Your Dota 2 News. Have a wonderful weekend.